Is there a key piece of insight that you got from having launched the Khan Lab School, from having this physical manifestation of your ideas that led you to do Khanmigo any differently than you might have done it otherwise?
Yeah, and you mentioned Khanmigo. Khanmigo is our name for the AI assistant or
Yeah,
the AI teaching assistant and tutor
yeah.
and other things, AI anything that we've implemented in Khan Academy. But yeah, there are some students, I would say maybe maybe 10% of students who are self-motivated enough, and we can debate why they are self-motivated enough to engage in something like that. And yeah, this is we're in a renaissance for those students. Those students can just go to town and learn at their own pace. But most students need more support. They need accountability. They need human beings in their life and they need other things. Even those 5-10% also can benefit from human to human interaction, et cetera. And so that's where, I learned through Khan Lab School, and we're learning every day working with school districts around the world, that that role of that teacher is essential in this AI world. Khanmigo, a lot of people's like, oh, is this about replacing teachers? Like, no, and I think it would be impossible to. And I actually think role, as long as the teaching role uh, evolves in the right way, I actually think it's only going to become more and more valuable. If you imagine teachers being people who only disseminate information, then okay, then there's other ways to disseminate information. And it's not just AI, it's videos. Even when the first textbooks came out 150 years ago, teachers were afraid that it was going to take away their jobs. But now teachers can't imagine teaching without a textbook. And so it's all about the job evolving. And I think many teachers, the best teachers today, recognize that their job is not to just be the source of information. Their job is to make a really engaging, interactive environment when they're in the classroom, to be able to personalize and differentiate as much as humanly possible, to be able to hold students accountable, to form human connections with them. And if we can create tools, Khan Academy, Khanmigo, that can offload some work for the teacher, even in their prep work, support students more real time, it should free up the teacher to do more of that human to human work.
I appreciate what you're saying, but there is a risk. Instance, one of the roles of teachers, especially in early years of education, is also to babysit the kids, and that's an important role. It's not the most highly qualified part of being a teacher. So the risk is that that role will remain, and the qualification will be taken by Khanmigo. And it's a bit like a Uberization of the teaching, where you reduce, with respect to a taxi, the old fashioned taxi drivers knew where to pick up the clients, what was the best route, all characteristics that made him somewhat valuable. And today, the Uber driver is just a machine that pretty quickly will be replaced by sort of these self-driving machines. So, isn't that risk in the process?
There could be, but I don't think that that's how things are going to evolve. A lot of what we talk about is, ideally you do have access to an amazing teacher and we can raise the ceiling there. But if you don't have access to a teacher or an amazing teacher, we can raise the floor. So on that latter case, in the extreme, yes, you can be in rural Alaska or a young girl in Afghanistan. You have no access to anything. Hopefully Khan Academy, Khanmigo, and we have another platform, schoolhouse.world, which is free tutoring and certification, that those can raise the floor for you. We also know, and we've experienced all of this, sometimes, and this is happening unfortunately more and more in a lot of our schools, is that you might have a substitute teacher for 2 or 3 months at a time, or you might have a teacher who's not expert in that field. Let's say, the school's trying to teach financial literacy. There's no financial literacy expert in the classroom. So they get the PE coach. The PE coach might be great. PE coach, no wrong, nothing wrong, but they're not an expert in financial literacy. And now all of a sudden they're teaching the financial literacy class. So we hope that in those situations, once again, we can raise the ceiling and raise the floor, where at least you have something to lean on, where the students can continue to move forward. But the ideal use case for the skilled teacher is always going to be that they can go that much further, especially if they're supported with good tools, to dive in, diagnose what's going on with their students, do in-person interventions. There are teachers who are already doing this, but it takes heroic amounts of effort to personalize in a class of 30. Any of us, if we had to do that even an hour a day, we'd get tired before we start. And there's teachers out there that are doing it for 5, 6, 7 hours a day, and then they go home and they spend 20 hours grading papers and this and that. So I believe, as you automate driving a car, yes, you just gave the example that, already out in my town here in Mountain View, at any intersection right now, I see 5 Waymos. It's actually quite creepy. We're now used to it now. It's like these like ghost taxis. But I don't think that that's going to be the case in education, because for my own children, or frankly anyone's children, I want my kids to have that caring adult go up to them and say, "Hey, Sal, that was really great. I saw what you did there." Or, "Hey, that wasn't so cool how you just talked to Mary. How do you think she would feel if she talked to you, or how would you feel if she talked to you that way?" These things are going to be irreplaceable. And that the teacher, and not just the teacher, I would say the teacher and the broader community that ideally kids are a part of.
So you have the best of intentions for Khanmigo, and probably the wherewithal from a personal standpoint to make it happen. Do you worry more broadly that the era of AI in education could release something far less pleasant, in the sense that in this day and age of budget cuts, too often instead of an AI and teaching assistants, it will be too often instead of a great teacher using AI, it will become a teaching assistant using AI, or just AI for our least privileged kids? And what responsibility do you feel to stop that? Can you have any responsibility to stop that beyond putting out the best product that you can?
Yeah, no, I definitely have fears of AI in education, but I don't have those fears as particular.
Okay.
I'll start with those fears. I haven't talked to one school district anywhere in the world, red state, blue state, anywhere, that even is hinting that they would even think about using AI to replace teachers or use it as a justification for less skilled teachers. And if I did see that, I would advocate very strongly against it. The places where AI is going to create a problem is cheating. And I write in my new book, Brave New Words, cheating isn't a new phenomenon. It's been there for a long time, but AI maybe has just made it a little bit more egalitarian. It's a lot easier to cheat, and it's a lot harder to detect now. We are working on solutions there where the AI is working with the teacher, providing more transparency to the teacher on the process, on how something gets constructed. So instead of the student doing the paper in a vacuum, they do it with the AI, where the AI acts as an ethical coach. And then the AI can communicate to the teacher, making it transparent what they worked on. And if the student goes to ChatGPT or gets their sister to write the paper, our AI will tell the teacher, "I don't know where this paragraph came from. We didn't work on it, and it looks a little bit different than Jimmy's other writing." There's used to be this whole class of stuff that we used to say, "Kids, go do that on your own, do it at home." They were already cheating, frankly. Chegg, the public company whose market cap went from like 2 billion to zero when ChatGPT came out. The reality is Chegg was a cheating platform where for $30 a month, kids could go put their homework up, and people would tell them the answers. And now ChatGPT comes out, and it's free to do the same thing, but it was already out there. And so I think it's actually good that AI is putting a spotlight so that educators aren't naive that kids weren't already doing this.
No, I agree 100% with that. This year, I decided that with my students, I actually encourage to use ChatGPT, because I think in the real world, you're going to use it. So trying to prevent them from using seems like impossible. And so I said, you can use it. There's one condition, that I'm going to call you in class. And if you don't know what you've written down there, you get 0 in class participation. And it seems to be working. So I think that I'm very sympathetic to that view. And I'm also sympathetic to another thing that you write that I thought was very interesting, which is the fact that we learn in different ways. And I learn it through my kids, because, of course, I learn my way. But then I saw that my kids were learning a completely different way than I learn. And there's not one way to learn. And the great advantage, I think, of Khanmigo is that you can fine-tune that. But let me play the devil's advocate here. And my concern is, now, who owns all the information? So you are building a phenomenal data set of how people learn, basically. And so you have individual characteristics, they have how they progress, how they don't, so that in the future, I can do a test and immediately be assigned to version A or version B or version C of Khan Academy. And now, what are the protection for this database? And this is one thing I have to ask, because as we know, OpenAI is transforming itself into a for-profit. And when there is a lot of value at stake, it's very difficult not to be tempted. So what prevents you from tomorrow becoming a for-profit that really exploit massively all the data you have accumulated?
Yeah, it's an important question. Yes, I think OpenAI has completed its transformation into a for-profit. When I started at Khan Academy, and I didn't know that the generative AI revolution was going to come in 2025, but I did think about this notion of data, and even like old school AI, having just people's data, how they're performing on different things. You could optimize, give them different treatments, et cetera, even back in 2008, 2009. And so I did think that data is going to be very important. And that is one of the many reasons why I set up Khan Academy as a not-for-profit. Frankly, I didn't want people to question why we are doing this. Going to now, we still take that very seriously. And it's not just about, the fact that we're not for profit. We also are very clear with people that we will never commercialize the data. We will never sell it to anyone else. We don't, whenever we use outside LLMs, they are not allowed to use the data. And then there's another aspect of data that, I think there could be well-intentioned people who could say what I just said, but they haven't passed their SOC 2 audits and all of that, and some hacker comes in and takes the data. So that's where I think it is important for someone to have credible organizations that know how to protect the data as well, which I think we do quite well. So, that's where our DNA is. This is what we've been doing from day one. This is what we've promised the world. And I think, one of our advantages is in this world is in this AI world. And I tell this to the team every day, is that the trust people have in us. If you go back over the last 15, 16 years since Khan Academy became a real organization, there were a lot of people who showed up on, some of them have even told me they were inspired by Khan Academy. And they said, oh, we're going to democratize higher education, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And they all had to kind of sell out one way or the other. And not that they're doing bad things, but they couldn't stay true to that mission or vision. But hopefully people see that this isn't just, we're not just some fly-by-night thing that's saying the right thing just to make people trust us inappropriately, that we've been living by what we've been saying for 15, 20 years.
So apart from the question about monetizing data, what about the question that data becomes a straitjacket for kids? You write about the potential for AI to be sort of a companion going through your life and to help evaluate you as you roll into college applications. But does that then limit the potential of human beings to transcend themselves, to make a leap from one state of being to another mental state of being? Because now there's this thing that has been with them all along that says, but that's what you were. And thus that's what you will be, and that it becomes a limitation for certain types of intellectual leaps or leaps in being.
Well, I actually think that was already happening well before Khan Academy and AI. That example where you get a D in Algebra 1 in 9th grade, and then you become a serious student and, get an A in Algebra 2 and pre-calculus and calculus. But you're still not going to be able to get into Stanford because you got a D on your transcript, even though you turned everything around. So your transcript was already that data that can judge you pretty harshly at a time. And later when you get your act together, the world's not willing to give you a second chance. And that even happens, you drop out of high school, and then later in your 30s you get serious, but now there's a stigma associated with a GED or whatever else. I think the solution here is around this notion of, well, I would say mastery learning and lifelong learning. The mastery learning is this idea of, if you haven't learned, if you're at a D level, you should always have the opportunity and the incentive to improve it. So for example, at our labs, so on Khan Academy, that's the way it works. If you keep getting something wrong, you can't do it, but then eventually you improve it, you can always improve what Khan Academy says. Whether you know it or not. Then you couple that with lifelong learning, because I think there's another dynamic where we only have a window to really prove who we are. And then the rest of our life, people judge us based on how we performed between the ages of roughly 14 and 22. But if we have lifelong learning, where you could say, well, look, even at 30, I can master calculus as well as the best University of Chicago or MIT student. Well, then that should be all people know about you.
Maybe it would be a better word than a guardrail.
There's a bunch I could list about transparency and security and all of that. But I would say this is not a guardrail. It's just a guidance. It's just like, know why you're doing something. It shouldn't be about AI. It should be about like, what problem are you trying to solve? And if the problem you're trying to solve can be solved with pencil and paper, solve it with pencil and paper. But if it's AI, use AI, because people keep, not just at schools, but everywhere, keep falling into this trap. When the iPad came out, Los Angeles spent some ridiculous amount. I'm tempted to say it was something like $500 million on iPads. And then they just gathered dust because they didn't know what they were going to use them for. And then similarly, there's a million startups that are claiming AI, this, that. But why are you using it? What outcome? What efficacy do you hope to push to? And then kick the tires. Make sure that it's real. Make sure it's not vaporware.